Welcome back to episode 4 of the first series of our CLBI podcast, the 72 podcast. The 72. You'll have to check out the website to understand where that comes from, but here's a hint. It comes from Luke chapter 10 and Jesus ascending. So we're moving through this why series. Why is CLBI important to me? Why is CLBI important? Why is CLBI? How did it stick? As we looked in the last episode, realizing that Jesus is up to something. There is that sense in terms of the longevity of anything that is faithful to Christ. Why? Because Jesus is up to something. So we're whittling it down here, Cullen and I, looking at why. This is a sense of deep why.
The big why.
The big why.
The irony is that we started with a bigger phrase, and we had a lot of thoughts and ideas and stories. But the smaller we get, the more focused we get down to this one why, the more there is to share about it, and the more depth there is. The irony, it's almost like an inverted triangle. It's like the less words we get, somehow underneath, there's even more.
Yeah. Yeah, and this one here, we've wrestled with so many things. We're going to look at we're going to talk about a SaskTel ad, and we're going to talk about a song from the movie Frozen 2.
Any guesses?
Any guesses? And as we look at this, and as we're talking right now, this sense of, I feel the most nerve-wracked about this, because this is so filled with significance, and we really want to talk about it with some clarity and inspiration. And so that's what we're praying for as we look at this.
And there's motivation for us to be like, oh man, we want to so badly get this right. Because we're obviously flawed people. With a podcast, and we could talk about anything, and we have spent a lot of time on this, not to produce an awesome product, but to be like, actually, with all of these things, I'm actually like, what do I actually believe about this? This isn't just a podcast show to entertain, but it's like, wow, this is actually hard for me to ask this question in my life. And so it's really been slightly shifting or clarifying things even, and being like this, our desire, and having the desire to not produce something awesome, but to hopefully even communicate our struggle with this, because it's in a podcast we could be like, well, why? Well, this ! The
Done.
end.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and we kind of got that, because what is the why?
Right.
Go into the whole world.
Yeah.
This sense of make disciples, baptize them, teach them. There is a why, and shouldn't we just say, okay, done?
Good enough.
Why do we have a podcast then?
Don't question it.
And there's some great truth to that, because that is the foundation of the truth. It is the call of Christ. And that's where we want to start this conversation about the call. And I think about, if I quickly sort of head outward from the Great Commission, okay, we live in a very broken and lost world. There's no question about it. And we experience it ourselves, our own brokenness and lostness. And one of the things that is not a why is to communicate a sense of guilt about us not doing something about this brokenness and lostness.
Right, the shame.
Guilt that often is turned into the experience of shame. Guilt is that I'm doing something wrong or not doing something I'm supposed to, and shame is there's something wrong with me. I am wrong. And Jesus doesn't use those in the why. So there is this sense of call, is what we keep talking about. And so we've all experienced that sense of looking at our phone. Okay, no, I can do that. I can look at that later. And so when we were talking about this is when you brought up this SaskTel ad. Remind us of that.
Kid of the 90s, and holy smokes, My parents would probably be ashamed of like how much TV I was allowed to watch back. TV wasn't my babysitter by any means, because most likely we were all just at home. But TV was so much of my life, and like so much of my memories are like radio commercials and TV commercials and shows and things that most people don't remember. I'm so glad for like the Reddit and Imager and stuff online these days, how it's just like, do you guys remember this? And I'm like, no way! These other people out there that remember these ridiculous blips in the media history.
Or watching videos of young people, Gen Z, so to speak, doing rotary phones, having to make a call on a rotary phone.
Or a VCR. Like, why does this thing spin? But what this made me think of was this memory of growing up in Saskatchewan, we had SaskTel, the best telecommunications company. And SaskTel had this commercial where this son and this dad, they had all their fishing gear on, and they were walking, boop-a-doop, and there was a phone like on a stool. Obviously, this is like a cheap studio, quick thing. A phone on a stool. They're walking by. It starts ringing. And the dad leans over and looks at the phone. And it displayed who was calling. This new call display concept. He leans over and looks. Nah. And turns his head. He's like, no way. And they just keep walking. They're going fishing. I mean, you were saying, you're like, yeah, it was probably mom being like, where are you?
That's right.
No, you can't go fishing. But it's burned in my brain of just that, like, they did not they didn't care who was calling. They checked to see, but they had other plans, and they were like, nope, thank you, call display. Boop, boop, boop. Circa 1996, probably.
That's so good. Yeah. But and that, of course, got us into the discussion about why do we screen a call?
Yeah.
Why do we ignore certain calls? And why do we pick up the phone and respond to certain
who is
calls?
worthy? Especially nowadays, how everything's just texting. Like, people don't even want to talk on the phone. It's like, who is worthy enough?
Yeah, there's lots of memes about that.
Why
is my phone ringing? How dare you phone me? But what is it? And just kind of thinking about that. It might be an expectation upon me that I don't want to respond to.
Yeah.
So it's in the way.
Or it could be even like bad news. Like, I mean, there's this idea of, you go in for a checkup and the doctor's going to call you back, and the doctor calls you back and you're staring. Yeah. You're staring at your phone. I don't want to answer this because the fear is, what if? What? But there's a possibility it could be, all the tests turned out negative. It's you're healthy. But there's this fear, or a family member calls. Like, nowadays, whenever one of us calls each other, we're like, we're kind of worried. We almost always inevitably bring up the fact, like, oh yeah, how's it going? I thought there was something wrong, to be honest. Like, what happened? And we realized we just wanted to catch up or whatever. But there's this association with something bad has happened. I need to call them, and that's like a fear.
Yeah, and that's a huge one. And I'm realizing as we're talking about this, and kind of where we'll land in just a minute. But I think of what I use texts for, because I like to talk. I love to communicate.
Hence, we have a podcast.
Hence why we're in a podcast. But that's so great. But I don't mind texting for brief conversations and a little bit of information. But I'm not one that will put page-long texts very often.
Me being sarcastic and like obviously ridiculous. Yeah. Text does not. It doesn't carry. Sarcasm doesn't carry over in text messages. Like, oh, he's a crazy person.
Sometimes I'm thankful for that. Sometimes I wish it carried over.
That's true. Phew.
But I always text ahead before I call because I don't want to interrupt. Yeah. Impose. Yeah, that's even more than an interruption. I don't want to impose. I don't want. It's this sense of and sometimes. Sometimes I live in that wrong, but I want to honor people's time, so I don't want to break into that. But that's the nature of relationship, is we do
That's
break
right.
into
That's
one another's
so
lives.
funny you say that, because
Yeah.
one of my close friends that I've kind of been getting closer with over the past few years, he was bothered that I was texting him and be like, "Hey, you got a moment to chat?" And
Interesting.
while we were talking, he's like, "You always text me before we chat. Like, don't." He actually told me, he's like, "I don't. If I can talk,
Interesting.
we'll talk. If we can't, I will tell you we
Yeah.
can't talk now." And he's like, "I'd rather hear your voice and have us chat about nothing than be like, oh, well, geez." But it was so fascinating, and I'm like, I've never heard anybody say these words before. And
That's intriguing, 'cause
They've
it's
stuck
usually
with
the other
me.
way around. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Don't phone me unless you text me.
Yeah,
as
but
opposed to
now
the
I'm
other
just
way.
like, he's
Yeah.
kind of onto something here.
So there's that sense of it might be an expectation I don't want to respond to, the sense of imposition or interruption, and then for me and for the purpose of our discussion, it could change our plans. I.e., e.g. example. I learned what I.e. stands for, and I think I use it wrong, and I can't remember the Latin for it. But my oldest daughter, told me, but I can't remember it now. Because I used to think it was in essence. But now I'm on a tangent. But it's our podcast.
We can do what we want.
It's this sense of, I don't want to change my plans. And that's what was so profound about the Sastel ad. He didn't want to change his plans based upon the call. And so as we look at calling, what is it that we're called into, and who's calling, and where are we going? And this led us into a fascinating discussion.
One might call it a rabbit hole.
A delightful rabbit hole to Frozen 2.
Frozen 2. I have 2 young daughters, one of which is currently 3 years old, and Frozen has shaken her world, and she's just obsessed with it. And obviously, Elsa is blonde-haired, blue-eyed Scandinavian, and my daughter Hattie is a very, very blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and Gemma. Gemma is too. Little girl. She just loves. She's all in on Frozen, and so last November, I think, we saw it in Frozen 2 in theaters, and the hit song from Frozen 2 was "Into the Unknown," and I'm sitting here in the theater, and I'm into it. I'm not a parent that's like, oh, I'm sick of all this. I think it's because my childish brain is just like, I love cartoons and I love this. I just love it.
Well, you're a graphic guy. You just love art in all its fashions. You do.
It doesn't annoy me. Other things they do annoy me, but this doesn't. I'm not tired of Frozen. A lot of people are. And I'm not on here to brag about and try and convince you about how great it is. You can have your own opinion. However, this movie, it starts going, and we're excited. Oh, man. And then this song starts. There's this little piano intro, kind of like from the first one with Let It Go. It's like, oh, there's that piano, and like cues it in. And she hears this voice. And I won't spoil anything for those of you who haven't seen it. But
good point.
yeah, like she hears this voice, and she references, I've had my journey. This is Frozen 2. This isn't Frozen 1. Like, I've been through all this stuff. And the lyrics, I actually have it. I don't have them off by memory, so I'm trying not to flatter myself. But as soon as this song was happening, as I was listening to the words, it was like, man, is this discipleship. Man, is this so the conversation with, like, myself and Jesus, and like this is scripture laden, even though it's, Disney doing what they do best. The song, the melody itself, the syncopations, the swells, like they have it all down to a science. But it starts off with the words, I can hear you, but I won't.
Boom, right there. That's enough.
You dropped the whole bomb.
Yep.
And the first line of the song, like, you destroyed me. So I can hear you, but I won't. Some look for trouble, while others don't. There's 1,000 reasons I should go about my day.
Interruptions.
And ignore your whispers, which I wish would go away. But it says ignore your whispers.
Yep.
It's not this loud voice that's just like wham, wham. It's not this, kind of parents coming down hard on it's. I'm ignoring your whispers. And there's plural whispers, which means you keep whispering.
God
Don't you
keeps
think if
doing
it
it.
didn't work the first time, you would try to speak louder?
Oh,
No. Like, it's
that's good.
seriously, it's nuts.
Yep.
And this, oh man, this part killed me. It's also kind of funny, but you're not a voice. You're just a ringing in my ear. You don't exist. I'm just.
My imagination. I made it up.
It's, And if I heard you, which I don't, I'm spoken for, I fear. Oh. If I heard you, which I don't. It's just this it's like a child. It's almost like parents talking to me like, can you hear me? No. Well, obviously you can.
Yeah.
If I heard you, which I don't, that's such, it's like my resistance against being like, no, God, no. I know this is, or I might not even know where you want me to go, but I hear your voice, but man, do I want to do other things, and man, do I have plans.
Yep.
So I'm sorry.
Exactly. Interruptions.
And it goes on.
change of
Yeah.
plans. Yep.
The interruption is so what we don't want. And so it goes on to say,
This is so good. Yeah.
everyone I've ever loved is here within these walls. Other
good
words,
to go.
I have everything I want. I'm sorry, secret's silent, but I'm blocking out your calls. Just
Sastel ad.
putting it out there. Yeah,
Blocking
here
out your
comes Sastel.
Screening your calls.
I'm sure Disney was inspired by the mid-'90s Sastel commercial. And she says, I've had my adventure. I don't need something new. I'm afraid of what I'm risking if I follow you. Like your gut just drops.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all hear it if we've heard the song in the Disney kind of really bouncy, floaty, plot-oriented animation and direction. But if you heard these words coming from even someone like John Legend or those acoustic, heart attacking musicians, you'd be like, wow, this is nuts. And then obviously the chorus, I won't. I do love singing it, but yeah. I'm afraid of what I'm risking if I follow you into the unknown. And it goes on. What do you want? You've been keeping me awake. In other words, you've been bothering me.
Yep.
Like, it's the younger brother finally getting the attention. Like, okay, just show me so this can get over.
So it can be done with this. Yep.
Are you here to distract me so I make a big mistake?
Whoa.
Or are you someone out there who's a little bit like me? It's changing. The gears are going. There's something not so anti this voice anymore. She's not all the way there.
Something's changing.
Who knows deep down I'm not where I'm meant to be. It's like the light bulb's not on yet, but it's flickering. Every day's a little harder as I feel my power grow. Don't you know there's a part of me that longs to go? It's like, wow, is this like almost like how I verbally understand something. I learn very well when I can vocalize and bounce things off of people. It might not all be right, so then they can correct me. But this external, it's like my ears are my moral compass somehow connected to that.
Wow.
But this, who knows, deep down I'm not where I'm meant to be. It's like, whoa, this such a humble, humility-oriented place of like, maybe there's a chance you may be onto something.
Yeah.
And then, are you out there? Do you know me? Can you feel me? Can you show me? Where are you going? Don't leave me alone. How do I follow you? The straight up.
How do I follow you?
The straight up answer. If you are doing something I should be doing, riddle me this, Batman. How do I do it?
Yes.
Like, it's unbelievable. And I know it's kind of comical because it's a Disney song, and you're like, well, they get paid to do this. And yeah,
so
they do.
Rich. Yeah.
But there are
It's
nuggets
so
out there
beautiful.
that aren't always necessarily a Christian musician or a Christian artist or a Christian speaker or writer. Like, God is not limited to those things. And in this, it floored me. And it's an emotional song, and it just culminates right at the end, and just, whew, But that is exactly what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
How do I follow you into the unknown?
Yeah. And that's just an incredible richness as we unpack this why, where we hear the authoritative beauty of Scripture and the Great Commission, but we're not responding with a fakeness just because you said so.
Yeah.
Right? Really, the why is about wrestling. This is Elsa singing this?
Mhm.
Yeah. Wrestling with, like Elsa did, the legitimacy of this call that comes. And as we were talking and praying this, we were talking about the legitimacy of the call is what we're responding to in this why, is that the call is from someone who is somewhere.
Where you aren't.
Where you are not. And that is, and there's a richness to that begs the desire to explore. So why is God this someone calling us from somewhere? Why would he do that?
And a
And we're not-
temptation is to really, like, there's a lot of books and a lot of great
Yeah.
resources which are valid and have helped
Very.
to many people of like, where is God calling you? I mean, we want to, that's a valid question.
It
We want to
is.
know that. But the
And
temptation,
we want to know how to respond to it.
yeah, and the temptation is to linger there,
Yeah.
which isn't inherently bad, but perhaps there's this one step further, not necessarily just where, but if someone is calling me somewhere, I would like to know why.
Yeah. That is so perfect. And I love how you talked about that sense of lingering, because lingering is really important to hear and to hear well. But sometimes we have what Elsa's doing. Everyone I've ever loved is here within these walls. I've had my adventure. Leave me alone. I'm
She's
good to go.
checking those boxes,
Yeah,
baby.
yeah, that's
like
good.
it's the criteria is there. Prove me wrong,
Yeah.
she's saying.
So why are we being called again and again and again
Into what we do not know.
into that unknown? And that's where kind of a richness of our discussion came in this strange phrasing. We are willing to go into the unknown because we are not. And that phrase is strange until we unpack it to see where that why is.
We are willing to go into the unknown because we are not.
We are not.
Oh.
We are not unknown.
Kind
by
of that
Jesus.
double negative.
Yeah.
It kind of
We are
takes
not
a moment.
unknown. Yeah.
Therefore, if we are not unknown, what we are is known.
We are known.
By who?
Yes. And we are known deeply. And that's what's rich about if Disney can begin to unpack the dynamics of wrestling with that, how much more do the Scriptures really speak to us? Does the Holy
Yes.
Spirit really shape our experiences to unpack who he is and why he calls us into the unknown? Why does he know us? Why are
Yeah.
we so known?
I know how. He's God, right? You
Yeah.
know the how, even the what. It's like, well, he is love, right? God
Yeah.
is. But like, for lack of a better question, why does he love me?
Yep.
You know, Jesus
Yes.
loves me. This I know. That's the root.
Yeah.
But like, let's take this. Let's crank it to 11 here.
Yeah. That's
why?
good. Crank this song to 11.
Thank you, Disney.
Thank you, Disney. And so, as we look at this, realizing how known we are by a God who is so huge and magnificent and purposeful and filled with grace, because we do screen his calls. We do. We do linger in a place
Yeah.
of comfort too long. We do, and we
Yeah.
will. And coming back to what we talked about in an earlier episode, what we do in here is for out there. And there's always that call to move out from what our experiences of that's known into that unknown. because he knows where he's leading us. He knows who he is. That's important. And he knows who we are and knows how we tick.
And we do have a limited concept of time.
Yeah.
We're going to
Yes.
limit God to being here with us now, knowing where he's going. He's not only confident because he knows the future, he is physically present in the future.
Yeah.
In every moment of the existence of the universe. He's he's in every millisecond, microsecond, nanosecond, which is like, which do you find, who would you rather follow? Somebody who's confident and in the moment, which human beings, that's all we can do.
That's all we know
is
how to do.
find someone who's confident and like, I trust you. Would I rather trust somebody who's confident, or would I rather trust somebody who has not only already been there,
Yeah.
but somebody who currently is?
Yeah. Well, and that strikes me with this beautiful passage from Luke chapter 7. Luke 6 and 7 have been kind of got us digging in so many different ways. And in this sense of Jesus showing up at Simon the Pharisee's house and is treated with a great deal of disrespect and
Obviously.
Yeah, that's right.
It sounds sad, but it's true.
Exactly, yeah. And then this woman who has been completely disrespected by religious leadership and religious authority and religious community, she comes in and weeps on Jesus' feet, dries his feet with her hair, and pours expensive oil on his feet. And Jesus' host is just aghast at this.
What a waste, he thinks.
What a waste. How come he doesn't know? He can't be a prophet if he doesn't realize who's at his feet.
If he really knew what was going on,
if he really knew, yeah.
He'd be on my side.
Yeah, that's good. That's a neat little addition and question to that, yeah. And then Jesus says, Simon, can I tell you a story? And and that's one of my favorite phrases of Jesus in confronting.
Because you know a bomb's about to get dropped. And I'm surprised people are like, no thanks, Jesus.
Yeah, no stories, please.
Let's
I know where this is going. That's fantastic. And he tells a story about two people who owed a moneylender a great deal of money and the other much less. And both were forgiven. And so Jesus asked Simon the question, so who would love who would love him more? And Simon goes, well, I suppose the one who's been forgiven more. Boom.
Ding.
Ding, exactly. And
second.
then Jesus points to this woman at his feet. She loves much because she has been forgiven much.
And
In other
words, I love
words,
how it didn't even come out of Jesus' mouth. It wasn't even Jesus who said. I love how he was like walking through, and Jesus is like, therefore. And Simon said it, not Jesus. So Jesus is like, so you said it yourself.
Yep.
There you go.
And then Jesus unpacks really what that means then. Well, and what you said earlier, before we started recording, you said that she loved much because she has been loved much, because forgiveness is loving. It can't be unloving and be forgiveness. You can't be
Inherently, it's part of love. It's like an appendage of love.
Yeah. And that's truly a great richness. And so we come to this. Why? Why do we not screen God's call? Why do we respond to his call? Why do we risk, like Elsa, the interruption, the change, when we're sometimes we're just really satisfied with how life goes and God nudges us and breaks in?
Or even
Kairos.
Kairos, that's right. God's breaking in, which segues into the other perspective of this. Why does God bring this to us? Why is God loving us? Why is he doing all these things? Like, if he is, why? So there's the struggle of both us being like, why in our lives?
Yep.
And there's the why does God be God? Like, why, you're just like,
why does God be God?
And it's funny that it all, even though they're both technically two different vantage points, two different perspectives, they all kind of, as the word verbiage you used, is they collide. There's a collision.
There's a collision. And that collision is love. and a compelling love, a love that knows us, a love that walks with us through the chaos of adventure like Elsa's experience. And we too can have that experience of wrestling with, wondering, listening, ignoring God coming back in again because he continues to be compelled by love. And as we experience that, we too are compelled by love. And that is the deep why. Being compelled by love. And Mark Hagan, who was on staff here for quite a number of years, he talks about the nature of success is not how many people come to the school,
because he
how
had
many
some
things.
years he was working at a bank, and logically, it's a business.
Yeah, you got to make money as a business. But the definition of success isn't the number of students here at CLBI, isn't the amount of money you make.
Pastors that come out of this.
Pastors
place,
that come out. Yeah, that's a good point. We could call
anything.
that success too. But he said the definition of success is how much love is produced. And things cannot be produced without that deep why. And you can't produce love without being compelled by love. A Bible school doesn't stay open for 89 years.
Fluke.
By fluke. Just by a good business model, because for the most part,
Which we know.
it's really not the greatest business model you could imagine.
That's not our territory.
It's not our territory. But Jesus is up to something. He is compelled by love, and he compels us by love. This world is a broken place. There is Simon the Pharisees out there disregarding these women with broken pasts, broken lives that were kneeling at Jesus' feet with great love. The world is filled with that. We are that. And we need to respond to his love.
Right.
Not a guilt trip.
That's
Never
right.
a guilt trip. Not just simply because it's the right thing to do. It's because the right thing to do is experience his love and be compelled by that love.
That's so funny you say that, because as you've been speaking just now, the words that keep coming, it's like they're throbbing in my head. Love speaks for itself.
Oh.
Love speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Even this idea of, the fact that God doesn't need us to speak for him. We do. If he calls us, we speak for him. But God doesn't even need us. Like, if he created us, so he doesn't need us. He doesn't need us to justify him. He doesn't
to justify his existence.
We don't need to make excuses for God. We live out of being created by him, but this concept,
he loves.
That he loves, and that we just do it. We obviously, there's that popular scripture, we love because he first loved us inherently. And so the crazy part is if God is love, and God speaks for himself, therefore love speaks for itself. It's earth-shattering, and yet disturbingly life-giving.
I love that. and things need to be disturbed. The surface, right? When you're gardening, you got to disturb the surface in order to plant something.
Yeah.
It is disturbingly life-giving. And love, it's got definitions galore, but we're looking at these definitions of paying attention to Jesus. How does Jesus show up around us? What is he up to?
And
what does
why?
that love look like? And he is compelled by love to love. And so we are loved. Therefore we look for love at work from the one who first loved us. I wrote that down because you said that earlier. Well, I want to say that one more time because this is gold. We are loved, right? And that comes again from we are willing to go into the unknown because we're not. We're not unknown. We are loved. We are known. Therefore, we look for love. We got to pay attention because we're compelled by love to find love speaking for itself, which is so beautiful. We look for love at work from, it's all sourced in Christ, from the one who first loved us. And the cycle goes on and on and on.
The OG.
Yeah.
Love.
Yes. Yeah. The OG. No question. Oh, that's so good. This has been a blast, Cullen.
Oh,
I am so
yeah.
thankful for our time wrestling with the beauty of the why.
It's hard.
Yeah, and it's good.
It feels,
It's good.
it's more than just a feeling, but
Yeah.
it's like, this is not profound stuff we're saying, but this in itself it's a deep well that we're beginning to draw water from.
Pulling some water buckets out of this deep well in a very refreshing way.
Yeah.
So that concludes our first series 1 on why. And we're looking forward to getting going on our next series, joining Jesus on his mission.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited about that. And we'll have that'll be interview podcasts.
Yeah,
and
there will
we're
be
really
others
looking forward
involved. It's not just going to be
to that.
our two
Riffing off each other.
ridiculous voices the whole time. Yeah, we got
We love
other people
this.
in line that are some are authors, speakers, pastors. Really a lot of perspectives and incredible insight into
be
some
good.
questions that we have. So we urge you and encourage you to keep on listening to these to the podcast, the 72 podcast that we will continue doing.
72. For questions, fire questions away at
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Podcast
at clbi.edu. By all means, email us. Send in. Oh, something Ted said was awesome. Something Cullen said was less awesome. We just want to communicate. We don't kind of like.
We'll have a discussion on false humility a little bit later. No, just kidding, bud.
By the way, I really am awesome. But no, we want to hear from you. We know this isn't just a conversation between Ted and I. We know you're listening. And we would love to hear your input, your thoughts. Not that we're just going to toss all them onto social media or onto the podcast.
We want to have you on the podcast as you
Yeah.
wrestle with these things.
But
We
you're
would love
kind
to
of
find space for
You're
that.
kind of the third person here,
Yeah.
the listener. We know it's not just Ted and I. There's the
Yeah.
listeners,
Thank
which
you.
is the whole reason for this. So thank you for listening, and we encourage you, send in an email to podcast@clbi.edu, or even on the CLBI social media. If you have something to say, you can toss it on there. We definitely would love to continue to grow this community of speakers, presenters, and for you guys, the listeners.
Yeah. So awesome. So signing off.
Yeah.
Cullen and
Series
Ted.
1
Series
completed.
1 completed.
We checked that box.
And we realized the box is to be thrown out and we're compelled by love.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway.
It speaks for itself. Well, thank you very much for listening.
you.
And have a lovely day. You've been listening to the 72 podcast, presented by the Canadian Lutheran Bible Institute in Camrose, Alberta, Canada.